Hey, are you a free trial Final Fantasy XIV player who's eager to get some of these amazing relics and items? If so, you may be looking for tips about how to progress through Eureka, the Stormblood endgame content. Even though I've relatively recently made an ultimate guide to Eureka, since that came out a few months before Stormblood's addition to the free trial, the guide ultimately fails to cover your free trial needs. I'm finally hoping to rectify this, so I'm making this video after having leveled my own free trial character recently. You can consider this shorter guide as a chapter 0 to the ultimate guide, a special chapter exclusive to you. You will be able to go through Eureka just by using this if you want, because the key points you need to know will be covered. To fully disclose what you can expect from this guide, here's a summary. Part 1 covers some general information about how Eureka functions, what to expect from its community, and how your inability to use different chat channels may impact you. This is also where I'm covering information on aggro types available in Eureka and offering tips on how to move around to rely less on other players while you're progressing. Part 2 covers the basics of Eureka experience grind. It's similar to chapter 2 in my ultimate guide, but it shaves off all the information irrelevant for free trial players. While the way experience scaling works is of course the same for all players, free trial players will want to go about their own experience grind a bit differently to make it safer and more consistent. Lastly, part 3 covers logogram farming tips to get you started in Pyros. This is something that the ultimate guide doesn't cover at all. Instead, in that guide, I recommend players use market board to skip the farming and speed things up. However, as this option isn't available to you, I want to make it much clearer as to where you can find certain logograms, how to effectively farm them, and what to do in their absence. As mentioned, all of your basic needs will be covered, but if you get stuck on something, consider going through the timestamps of the ultimate guide and finding information there, or ask in the comments. That being said, let's go into the guide. Eureka is billed as a special zone with special rules, trying to keep the spirit of the old-school MMOs such as Final Fantasy XI. Therefore, you'll find that Eureka doesn't hold your hand much at all while you're progressing through. Instead, it counts on your communication with other players to find out where to go, what to do, and how to help each other in every aspect along the way. Because of this, you will find that the Shout Chat is the most commonly used chat channel in Eureka instances. People communicate when a fate pops, ask if someone is on the way, ask for raises, and share all kinds of useful information such as experience fairy buff locations or notes about all the fates currently on cooldown. As you are well aware, you cannot send shout chats on free trial, and with say chat being your only method of communicating with players outside of your party, this will prove to be your biggest challenge inside. Thankfully, you can still read the shout chat, so this can come handy. Keep an eye on it, as you can still collect information about where the elemental fairy is, tracker links, and get notified when a fate pops. Probably the biggest hurdles you'll run into will be asking for a raise when you die or getting into a party. So let's talk about how to tackle raising restrictions first. In Eureka, after you reach elemental level 6, you will lose experience if you die and do not get raised by another player. Of course, enemies in Eureka are also quite dangerous and designed to make it harder to survive. However, I will now teach you how to not ever die and therefore avoid the need for asking for a raise during your progression. First thing to keep in mind is enemy aggro, or in other words, what makes the enemies spot you. There are 4 different main types of aggro in Eureka: sight, sound, magic, and blood. Let's start with the most common one. Sight. You can imagine sight aggro as a cone in front of the enemy, about 45-degree wide and of course more narrow closer to the enemy you are. To avoid sight, naturally move behind the enemy and keep an eye on the monster's last movement. They tend to move every 20 to 30 seconds and usually in the opposite direction from where they were facing. So if you're approaching a very narrow field with enemies and you're not sure if they'll turn around soon, wait it out at a safe distance and move soon after the enemies have shifted their position. You should have enough time then. Be vigilant to adjust your position behind the enemy if they start moving as you're passing by. The majority of the monsters in Eureka Animos and Hidatas have this aggro type, while Pagos and Pyros also have a lot of sight mobs, but they tend to have a lot of sound aggro too. Sound aggro is shaped like a circle around the enemy with a range about half shorter than sight. To avoid these enemies, you have to toggle RP walk. You can keybind this in the movement menu for easy access. Animos only has one notable sound aggro enemy as the Magia fans around the level 17 quest location. Pagos and Pyros, however, are filled with sound aggro. Pagos has a bunch of these sleeping dragons, usually in the most sneaky places on the map. So here's a map of where you can expect them. Also, these Sanchinis are sound, as well as the Morbles around the level 35 quest location and Corpse Flowers in the Forge. In Pyros, a lot of the enemies on the north part of the map are sound. Clippers, Carlabos, Slimes, Hawks, Wood Golems, Piranhas, and Nankas, as well as a few sleeping dragons again. This is all difficult to remember, but don't worry, it's really only the sleeping dragons you must worry about, as they will probably kill you if you wake them up during leveling. Everything else you can outrun on your mount at first and then remember them from experience. While sight and sound you may have utilized before in 14, magic and blood aggro are unique to Eureka. These are thankfully quite consistent, so they're also easy to remember and handle. Magic aggro is the aggro type of all of the sprites, no matter the element or the instance. The only additional enemies with magic aggro are these white flames in Pyros. Magic aggro means these enemies will attack you if you cast something nearby them, within about 20 alms distance, so their range is quite wide. These enemies will ignore you if you walk around them or if you do physical abilities. If you're doing Eureka on magical jobs, be very mindful of weather changes every 23 or so minutes, as sprites spawn at various locations in every weather other than the fair skies. If they are around, focus on them first to clear out the way and not get overwhelmed. The respawn timer is a bit longer than that of the other enemies, about 5 minutes. Lastly, blood aggro is tied to all of the so-called Ashkin enemies in Eureka. Those are the enemies that only spawn during night, between 6 PM and 6 AM Eorzean time. They aren't marked in some clear way in the game, but you'll recognize them because they always have some kind of theme of death. These enemies will fully ignore you unless your HP is low, about 10%, so be mindful of them when you're fighting other stuff or jumping from high places. The shape of their aggro is also a circle just under 20 alms wide. So navigating around, you'll notice most of your attention goes to side aggro enemies, and remember you can target them to see their hitbox if you need to know where they're facing. Before you commit to killing some monsters, find yourself a relatively safe spot where you can bring enemies to avoid getting overwhelmed as other monsters move around or respawn. Generally, pull one by one, unless equipped with logo sections later, as enemies here do hit hard and can crit you. Keeping your life intact and chain going is more important than risking a multi-pull. Also, keep all of your magicite in the same slot on the wheel as you unlock them, most of the time in offensive. When you get into trouble, you can swap the defensive with a simple macro, massively reducing the incoming damage. When traversing, always use a mount, as your speed will potentially save you from situations when you aggro something on accident and have to outrun it. The Eureka Tracker website has really good maps for all of the zones. Pagos, Pyros, and Hydatos maps show aggro types next to the enemy names as well, if you ever need to double check them. There are a couple of examples of true sound or true sight aggro. True sight will ignore stuff like ninja stealth, so be mindful that you are respecting their field of vision and go behind them. True sound you can treat sort of like proximity aggro. Try to just stay away from these enemies in order to not trigger them even while you're walking. The more you learn the layout and the instances, the easier it will get to survive. When it comes to getting into a party, you can still ask it through Say Chat when you're near the Fate area, or try by going into the player search menu and setting your status to looking for party. I will tell you though, both of these methods aren't something that community of Eureka tends to expect yet, so sometimes you might get ignored because simply people don't see you or they even have their Say Chats turned off. However, there is something important to take note of. I don't really recommend you to join parties unless you already build up a sufficient enough elemental level of your own in each instance. To be more clear, I suggest avoiding parties until you're at least these levels on the screen, but ideally you can fully avoid them until you're level 17 in Animos, 32 in Pagos, 47 in Pyros, and 57 in Hydatos. You're wondering why? The key to understanding this lies in understanding how experience scales, so let's dive a little bit into that. As fully explained in the main guide, Eureka elemental experience is different from normal job experience, and it has a very different formula under which it gets calculated. Essentially, experience will be formed by comparing your current elemental level to the enemy level, and it will also be equally affected by having other players in the party and comparing their levels to yours. Let's try to simplify this with some examples on the screen. In short, by looking at these examples, you see that everything needs to be within 8 level range in order to benefit from any kind of experience gain. Fates all have a level assigned to them, and they all spawn by killing specific enemies out on the field. Enemies that are necessary for a fate to spawn are always 5 levels higher than their respective fate, meaning to spawn Pazuzu, a level 20 fate in Animos, people will be killing level 25 rates, so you need to be at least level 17 to benefit at all from such a grind. Also, fates give significantly reduced experience if you are under level for them, and it doesn't really pay off well to travel to a fate that is more than 2 or 3 levels above yours. So to summarize, my recommendation is to grind enemies 1 level higher from your own until you get to the point where you can benefit from all, or at least most, fate grinds in the area to their full extent. This will be quite faster than going to all fates, and also much more efficient because you'll rely less on party invitations. If you get to level 17 in Animos and then join a fate party, you can hopefully stay within the same party until the end of that instance timer without getting penalized and with no elemental experience. Also, getting to max level, especially when playing solo, is a priority before you start grinding for the relics. Fates are only really needed for the relic grind, except for one quest in Animos, which does require 99 fate crystals. As a max level player, you travel much easier, get full rewards for every fate, and you can also adjust and go to any instance that is currently most active. I also usually recommend building only Animos relic weapon stage before you move on to the next instance, as it can normally be done by simply focusing on fates after level 17 and hopefully catching a Pazuzu window at level 19 or higher. Finishing this stage in particular before your level 25 in Pagos will help you get started on Pagos light grind as early as possible, which can save you loads of time later. All the other relic steps are easier done later, so just passively do them until you're max level and are as strong as you're gonna get. If you don't want to worry about party invitations and gold ratings in the fates later, I suggest going to them as a tank with your tank stance turned on. The rating is generated mainly through aggro. Usually parties build up a lot of it because 8 people doing spells is a lot of aggro, but a tank can normally build up enough of it on their own to earn the gold rating. Let's run through things that can help your experience grind. First and foremost, every instance has these 3 elemental fairies somewhere, always randomly placed. Standing near them gives you an hour-long buff to experience, damage, and a passive regen. Secondly, from Pagos onwards, you will be getting some of these items from chests, which you can use to craft potions of harmony if you have a level 60 alchemist. It gives 10% experience buff in Eureka specifically that lasts an hour or 90 minutes if high quality. Thirdly, also from Pagos onwards, some enemies get the ability to mutate or adapt under specific weather circumstances, giving a lot more experience than usual. For that, consider checking the Bestiary under the description. Never stun the enemy when it's casting mutation or adaptation, and try killing them on rounded chain numbers, 10, 20, or 30 when possible, to get some juicy bonuses. In Animos, such mechanics don't exist yet, but sprites and ashkins give a little bit more experience per kill than regular enemies, so you can use the same logic with them. In Pagos and Pyros, these rates are random, but Hydatos has 100% rate on mutations and adaptations, so definitely take advantage of that when possible. Lastly, there is a weekly challenge log that gives massive boosts to your experience, which resets every Tuesday at 9 AM server time. If you haven't unlocked the challenge log yet, do it here in Limsa Pub near the F Castle teleport. Make sure to use up the entire challenge log before the weekly reset, and remember you can do this in any instance. As a bonus, while your recon potions aren't buffing your experience directly, they do give you a pretty handy regen and make you much sturdier when chaining enemies. Buy them in the base from Eureka Provisioner for regular gil. They also drop from Fate lockboxes sometimes. For specific leveling tips for each instance, you can use the ultimate guide and follow it along. I tried making this easier for you by preparing a document down below in the description that has some direct timestamps that you might be interested in. The last thing to mention, which the ultimate guide doesn't prepare you for, is logogram farming. When you finally arrive at the fun part, Pyros and Hydatos, the game will quickly familiarize you with the new system, Logos Actions. Now, this is a rather fun system, and I go into much more detail about it in the ultimate guide, so I recommend checking it out when it comes to explanations of the system itself. However, to use these special actions, you will need logograms, normally tradable items that you'll have to collect yourself. Now, I really don't recommend skipping the Logos Action system. The game is designed with its use in mind from now on, and not only only that you can make leveling much easier and faster, but not using the abilities will make the game significantly harder instead. Luckily, many logos actions can be crafted in different ways, and the Eureka Tracker website has all the recipes you need. The most important logogram to find at the start will be conceptual. With these alone, you'll be able to storm through the content from now on with much more ease. Some other ones are useful too, such as fundamental, mitigatives, and curatives, so I'll cover those a little bit as well, but only conceptuals are what you must find. Conceptual logograms are most easily farmed through sprites. In Pyros, all sprites that don't adapt will drop 5 or more conceptual logograms, depending on your chain. At the beginning of Pyros, this means all sprites between level 35 and 40. Thunderstorm and Typhoon sprites will be present in the area around the base if it's their weather type, so I highly suggest going around just carefully targeting them and avoiding other enemies during thunderstorms or umbral winds. Caster can be handy here too to aggro them from afar. Killing these sprites for about 10 minutes will get you enough conceptual logograms to finish Eureka leveling altogether. With conceptuals, you can craft Spirit of the Remembered, Bladebearer, and Bloodbath, the 3 actions that make you quite invincible, and this will significantly improve your experience grind from now on. As I mentioned, I went into much more detail about how to craft these specific actions in the Ultimate Guide, so please check that part if you're having any confusion about this once you have the ingredients. Now, some of the other useful logograms can be curatives, fundamentals, and mitigatives. Consider this optional for leveling, but if you manage to get some of them at the methods that you see on the screen, you can jump through some levels faster by utilizing the reflect technique mentioned in the main guide. In the absence of reflect, continuing to use Bladebearer and Bloodbath combo is still very comfortable and quick. With this guide, hopefully I managed to answer some of the most common worries you probably had while going through other learning materials while on free trial. I hate to be plugging the Ultimate Guide so much, but note that Eureka has a lot of depth and all of that is already dissected there, so I didn't want to simply make a copy of that guide. Instead, the idea was to focus only on specifics for free trial players, and I hope you'll enjoy your time in Eureka a bit more from now on. Since you are limited in talking to others in game, consider this learning material on the side your shout chat, and feel free to ask additional questions in the comments either here or in the Ultimate Guide. In order to make this easier for you, you'll find a document below containing a timeline of steps I'd recommend you doing, along with the timestamps leading to those explanations in the Ultimate Guide. May the elements be with you.
Oh, last fairy. I can't even say that the fairy is dead. This fairy is dead. I can't shout it. Bye, fairy.